didn't see you get on. Well, into the line.
No, it's not Skate 4. And here's the reason. This isn't a sequel. It's not a remake. It's not a reboot.
Welcome back to the home of Shred.
Skateboarding and video games work together perfectly. In fact, I'd argue that skateboarding games transcend genres. Skateboarding at its core is an action sports title. Not everyone is interested in sports games, and when you're not into a specific sport, why would you be? But even if you're into racing games, shooters, or even puzzle games, they all involve one mechanic that every gamer can appreciate, that being physics. Most people I grew up around had a PS2. Not all of them were skateboarders, nor was some even interested in skateboarding. But I'd kind of be surprised if they didn't own at least one Tony Hawk game. The Tony Hawk titles ruled the 6th gen of gaming, and we all know this, but when it came to the 7th gen, there was a movement. A shift away from the arcade style of racking up high combos into something a bit more grounded, more realistic, and most importantly, a better representation of what skateboarding was really about. Skate quickly became the new Tony Hawk of the 7th gen, outselling the series giant in its first debut. What followed were 2 more games that improved upon the series in different ways, and then we got nothing. For years and years, fans waited, bombarding EA in every post on their socials saying, "We want another Skate, make Skate 4. After 15 years, the good news is, we got it.
Daddy, yes!
Bad news is, it fucking sucks.
Look at this dude.
I've been playing Skate for so many years and have played since the first game. In fact, if you scroll back to my first few videos, you'll find 2 of them were Skate 3 videos from about 3 years ago. That's why I've really taken my time to gather my thoughts on this game and not just view farm the fact that it looks corporate and there's no game modes and blah 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 blah. I really want to deep dive into why its current state has off-put so many players, my suggestions on improvement, as well as a failsafe for the series that I'll discuss towards the end of the video. Firstly, I will skip over the things that are obvious. It looks objectively worse than the previous games, it runs on microtransactions that are way too expensive for what you get in return, there's barely any skateboard brands associated with the game, nor any pros, no story, which would actually be fine if this wasn't advertised to us, no previous game modes, I can't skitch, dark slide, or hit people, and why does every NPC look like this?
Sachet away.
Season 2 of Skate 4 has just dropped, so before I say anything, I will just say, now we have impossibles and 2 new spots. Now there was more to this update, but I wouldn't really count them as updates and more necessities trying to backpedal against all the backlash. We now have slightly more realistic models, improved replay editor with keyframes, and you can get rid of the compass so you can
Think so clearly without all the visual clutter.
Now everyone will know the locals are crazy about postmodernist aesthetic contextual reframing.
And don't get me wrong, this all sounds well and good, but these are things that we should come to expect at the start, considering this game had a big emphasis on quote-unquote taking our time, and when it's ready, it's ready. On a more positive note, I will say the core gameplay is intact. It is fun to skate and it feels satisfying. But even on this factor, I'd still like to emphasize that only the street skating is fully developed, and the transition still feels awkward and needs work. Skating in this game is a whole different ballgame. Your character feels very floaty, and pretty much every time you make the smallest rotation, it's corrected with a revert. Everything feels a lot more weightless and snappy, which for a quick-footed tech style feels amazing, but for those other scenarios, I'd actually prefer how the previous games felt. Skate 1 to 3 had this small delay where you would be leaning into a turn before you actually turned, making it feel like you were actually forcing the board to turn like real life. Humping on ramps felt a lot more consistent, and even turning in a manual, a spacewalk for those who know, was actually heaps more responsive back in the previous games. These are all somewhat minor things, but I'm just going to put them out there because when I go back and play Skate 3, it feels like I need to learn how the physics play out rather than the physics correcting themselves for my gameplay. Gameplay aside, there's a lot of tidbits that really piss me off. I honestly really wish they didn't worry about the story at all. The whole M-Corp thing would have been cool to bring back from Skate 2, but if they weren't going to follow through with this, then why shoehorn this terrible, half-baked idea? Now AI robots are annoying you about skate trivia, and you can't get hurt because Impervatech has somehow made humans invincible. which I assume is injected or microchipped into each person. I don't know, don't ask how it works, it's just science. Also, in between all of these groundbreaking technological leaps, Slappy and Shingo have remained the same age. I will say the complaints about the cringe dialogue has seemed to have gotten through to the developers, as Season 2 has toned it down a lot. Something else that really
grinds my gears
is the soundtrack. I don't think anyone has mentioned this before, but the music is actually kind of a problem. It's not because the music is bad or it isn't my taste or anything like that. In fact, there's a lot of artists that I really enjoy here. It's actually because there's too much. Hear me out. When you listen to this song, I bet you can tell me what game this is from.
Yo, check this out.
Now, if you listen to this song, you could also probably tell me what this is from. You're not going to be able to have this nostalgia with Skate 4 because the playlist is ever evolving with each season. The reason you remember these soundtracks so vividly is because you hear them over and over again. You got to know these songs like a CD or vinyl. And yes, you're right, I can just turn the music off and I can put on my own playlist, but that defeats the whole hype of the artist getting on the soundtrack. Music can also be an acquired taste, and listening to a track for more than a few times might actually change your opinions on it. The earlier Tony Hawk games had 15 to 30 tracks, and that's the reason it always sounds nostalgic. Skate 3 had 47 licensed tracks, and Skate 4 has almost doubled that, and it's still in beta. Now, I am fully aware that this is a me problem, and it's probably not worth complaining about as much as I am, but it does contribute to the ever-expanding accessibility we have these days with streaming. This didn't happen to me with Cyberpunk, and it's probably not going to happen with Hyperfunk. That much, I know. Aside from this, I'd like to quickly touch base on the level itself. The city is decently sized, and it does have a lot of spots, but this is kind of the core of the problem. It actually has too many spots. When they talk about Skater Eye, they're not talking about this. They're more so talking about this. And if that is your playstyle, then this city is so perfect for that. But it is not built for street skating, or even really vert. The skate parks themselves feel really plain and kind of like GTA skate parks, if that makes any sense. And then we get to the most popular part of the game, the street sections, which are just overcrowded. No joke, you can pretty much skate in any direction for about 3 seconds and find a perfect ledge. Or you'll find a perfect bank or a perfect rail. It's really just not believable. Skate 3's world kind of started having this problem a little bit, in my opinion, but Skate 1 and Skate 2 really had the perfect level. For those of you who haven't played Skate 2, which is at least a few of you because this game is the least accessible in the series, it has the best map by far. Skate 1 had a great map. It had believable spots, it had a lot of open areas to kind of freestyle, and it just felt like you actually had to go search for a spot. It wasn't just right in front of you. When you cruise around in Skate 2, you kind of stop yourself and you think, wow, that's a sick spot, I'll go skate that. Whereas you never have that in Skate 4. You keep constantly cruising and going past spots because there's just an amalgamation of them. You don't need to really stop to find a cool spot. That's where the problem lies. Skate 2 basically expanded on the Skate 1 level. In fact, if you play Skate 2 after playing Skate 1, you'll realize how many spots are just straight up taken from Skate 1, but they're expanded upon. There's sort of a beginning area, and then there's like the downtown area, but in between, you basically get a meld of Skate 2 and Skate 1, and it's just so perfect. A majority of Skate 4 spots are built pretty much on ledges, ramps, and rails. And they basically don't really expand from that, they just kind of extend different versions of those. Like, you can cruise past and find a million ledges or a million rails, and you can find a ramp that usually connects them both, but that's basically it. There's no landmarks, there's no real, purpose to these spots. What also isn't helping is that the Skate 4 map is so much smaller than the Skate 2 map. Seriously, this is just insane. I can skate from one end to the other in Skate 4 in about probably 5 or 10 minutes at most. If I were to go from the top to the bottom of the map in Skate 2, I would assume that would at least take half an hour. And hopefully at some point they will expand this by opening those bridges and creating new areas, but I really don't see that happening at this point. You're probably all thinking at this point, wow, this is depressing, and looking at the video title thinking, where is this going? Well, there's hope for the series, but it doesn't involve this new game. Over the years, the Tony Hawk series has mostly had a steep decline ever since Skate took over. But after the worst game in the series, which I made a video about, fans took it upon themselves to recreate the glory days through an older engine, bringing back new life, new players, and a new perspective on game preservation. This project was called Thug Pro, and in 2013 it was released into beta. Since then, we've also gotten Rethought, another passion project made by die-hard fans in the American Wasteland engine. This, I believe, was also getting enough momentum to actually reach Tony Hawk himself and let him know that fans were still willing to put their time into the series. I genuinely believe that if it wasn't for the fans trying to preserve these games, we wouldn't have Pro Skater 1 to 4 remastered. History does tend to repeat itself, especially when nostalgia is involved. At this point, Skate 3 is 15 years old, and with that amount of time passing, we're finally starting to see the bones of a Thug Pro preservation for Skate 3. I was just scrolling through my Instagram about a month ago, and I got a bunch of reels of people playing D-Dust and Super Mario 64 levels in Skate 3. Even the entire Skate 2 map has been ported to this game now. Skate 3 has always had a strong yet small modding community when it comes to cosmetics, and even later down the line being able to adjust stats. But now people are easily porting levels, and I think with a big enough team of talented people, we could even be looking at multiplayer down the line. Maybe even a streamlined version that you can just download without needing to emulate the game. Even though we have remasters of 1 to 4, I still find myself coming back to Thug Pro all the time because it's the engine I grew up on. It's what I'm familiar with, and most importantly, it's what feels familiar to me. I think for Skate fans, Skate 3 is that engine in the series. Now, I'm not knowledgeable enough on game development at all, but I really hope that a bunch of talented fans can come together and make this a reality.